Hi everyone, my name is Amber.
I'm Yazmeen, and welcome to another episode of the Off the Charts podcast. This is the podcast where we speak with experienced artists and hear more about their journeys to getting to where they are today.
Today we are super excited to be sitting down with the lovely Miss Yazmeen Kanji. Yazmeen is a film director and producer whose triumphs as an award-winning filmmaker in various capacities, and at 22 years old, might I add, have garnered her much attention in the Toronto entertainment industry.
Following many years of being immersed in high-achieving education systems, she followed her passion into the arts and worked to set up a sustainable and successful career in the film industry. She's worked with organizations like the Canadian Council of Muslim Women, TIFF Next Wave, CBC's Breakthroughs Emerging Filmmakers program, and many others.
How are you doing, Yazmeen? How's it going?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
It's
so exciting. Yeah.
We're so excited to talk to you. Again, every time we have to say this because we're like so in awe of every guest that comes on, but we love what you're doing and we're so excited even just ourselves to hear a little bit about what you do, and we think it could be so informative for people who kind of want to do what you're doing and follow in your footsteps. It's going to be a great episode. So we're going to get right into it.
Yeah, so as always, we'd like to jump in with some basic questions in the beginning. So talk to us a little bit about your upbringing in such academically rigorous programs such as IB and French immersion. How did you manage to make that shift between the field of study to the arts?
Yeah, so I was always a super competitive student, and when I say competitive, I mean with myself. I was just always trying to up myself from whatever I did before. When I was in grade 5, I started what I called the Global Response Team at my elementary school, because I felt that our school wasn't doing anything for the greater community, and any initiatives we were doing were pretty much just for the school and for the purpose of the school. And I just didn't feel right about that. So I think I kind of always had this tendency since I was young to want to do something more and do something bigger that I felt could have an actual impact in communities beyond my own. So I started off doing that sort of activism fairly young. And so that was in French immersion. Then I went on to IB. I had always wanted to do film. It was something I had talked about since I was really young, but you know, in the back of your head, you're also trying to think a little bit realistically, and you're being told, oh, you know, the arts isn't a sustainable career, and, you know, if you want to go into academics, you have to do this, and you have to do that. So I kept my love for film to myself. I mean, not to myself. I was always doing videos, but I tried to think about another realistic goal. So I thought, you know, maybe I would go into policy, or maybe I would go into law, and that film would be something that is really important to me, but maybe not necessarily the only thing that I do. So at the University of Toronto, I double majored in peace, conflict, and justice studies and critical studies in equity and solidarity, and I minored in cinema studies. And around
That's a whole plate.
Yeah, it's a lot. It is a lot. I really enjoyed it though. And so in second year, I was trying to decide what I really wanted to do after my undergrad. So I was doing a little bit of work through co-op programs and nonprofit spaces. And I enjoyed some of that. I found some of it pretty limiting in terms of wanting to be more creative. So I also had this goal of wanting to work in the film industry in Toronto in some capacity. So I would go to, I was an Innis College student, so they had a lot of cinema related events. So I would go to all of the screenings that they had, all the panels that they had with filmmakers. And one of the filmmakers that came was Charles Officer, and he was screening his documentary called Unarmed Verses. I was a huge fan at the time and super nervous, but after the whole event, I went up to him and basically let him know that I'm really interested in this field and I'm trying to figure out where my passions lie. Would you ever be open to, you know, allowing me to shadow you at some point? And to my surprise, he gave me his personal phone number and email. And I thought, wow, that's pretty amazing. And then I interned at the Canadian Screen Awards through U of T, and then I had run into him a couple of times there. Nothing for about half a year, but then 6 months later, I got an email from him saying that he needs a little bit of work done for his production company. And so since about third year, I've been working with Charles Officer's production company, which has been really great. Yeah, but believe it or not, even throughout doing that amazing work, I was still contemplating possible careers outside of the arts, just because when you're in such an academic institution, you feel very pressured to have a career that is centered around, you know, whatever is expected of you. So I was still thinking about law and the LSAT and policy. But then I did an internship in Dubai for about a month in 2019 in the summer. And it was a really fun experience at a very new production company. And it's across the world. And I got this internship, you know, just through a couple of family connections. And I just realized, you know, if I'm able to feel like I'm doing something impactful and something that's so fun, that didn't really have anything to do with my academic track record and just had to do with you know, the way I connect with people and my skill set and my passion, then I had this realization of, you know, I have always known this is the field I want to go into. I just have to really dedicate myself to it now. So I think that was kind of the moment, like right before I went into fourth year, where I decided I was going to fully embrace this. And I just kind of went full speed ahead from there.
Well, that's actually so interesting, because a lot of the time we talk about this, some of our guests, you know, have gone that route of going to more an academically rigorous program, or some people just dive right in. But it seems you when you found out this is what you want to do, you really went for it. And it seems like you were actually quite strategic about it in kind of finding those opportunities and such. So going from like one point A to B, what kind of support system did you have for that? You know, were there people like family, friends around you who were nervous for you, or were kind of maybe talking you down from what you wanted to do?
I think mostly I have to say I'm really blessed in that area, because I think, for example, like my mom has always encouraged me to do exactly what I want to do career-wise. And she always says, you know, like, Yazmeen has been holding a camera since she was 2 years old. So it kind of makes sense. And my family is all pretty supportive. I think my dad took a little bit more convincing, you know, Daisy father type of convincing. I feel
that 100%. Oh my God.
But I think he just saw that, you know, anything that I kind of had ever put my mind to since I was young, I followed through with. So I think that gave him some reassurance that I wasn't just going into this idea of what I wanted to do blindly, that I did have like a strategic plan in place. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really, I think it's great that you kind of seeked out, tried a little bit before making that full switch. But I do wonder if the majors and the things that you studied at U of T that weren't related to film, did that end up helping you at all in the film industry, or did you kind of wish that you just went straight into studying film?
No, I'm actually very grateful for the education that I had. I don't regret any of what I did. I think it really informed me about not only like the topics that I do want to cover in my films, but also the people that you're going to encounter through the industry. So it's interesting because I just adored the Critical Studies in Equity and Solidarity program at New College at U of T. Shout out to them. They don't get enough support, I think, and they just do a fantastic job. I understood intersectionality in such a new way, and I think that really changed how I wanted to tell stories and how I interact with people of different communities. And then, you know, being in a program that some might say is a little bit more, you know, considered elite would be at the Monk School. And so just navigating these different spaces and seeing the way people understand certain world issues and the way that they talk about them, it really just makes you realize the way that people think and the way that you might need to convince someone out of a problematic perspective.
Right.
So I think it was really interesting overall, and I think it definitely contributed to what I want to do now.
Mm-hmm. And you actually mentioned that much of what you were doing there, kind of like academic, you were also focusing on kind of coupling your minor in cinema studies. And you mentioned talking about the study of the global impacts of media portrayals on marginalized communities. And a lot of the work which we're going to get into now that is centered around that in your films, did you know that were the topics that you wanted to kind of portray or produce as a filmmaker? Did that kind of give you that given, I guess, to that topic?
Yeah, I think so, because when I was in cinema studies, any paper I had to write, I would always center it around the experience of someone who's considered historically marginalized in the context of, you know, whatever I'm writing that paper about. So I think one of my major research papers was about Ida Lapino, who was one of the very first Hollywood female film directors. And so I analyzed all of the films that she had done in a certain time period and how they reflected her personal experiences as a woman in the industry and just as a woman in general. And that really interested me. I did another large paper about the white savior complex. I did another one about blaxploitation. I think I did another one on Afrofuturism. And I just loved learning about how social issues are represented in film. From, you know, historically to the present. And so yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I think it definitely informed the way that I wanted to tell the stories that I ended up telling coming out of undergrad, because it just gives you an appreciation for the communities that really need their stories told, and why they haven't had their stories told. And it, you know, it also frustrates you because you feel like, well, the answer is so obvious, but not enough people are doing that work or get the opportunity to do that work.
Yeah, so speaking of your films, Yazmeen has directed 2 award-winning short documentaries focusing on Muslim identity and experiences. Her first film, From Syria to Hope, was awarded Best Short Documentary at the 2019 Toronto Short Film Award, which is amazing. And her second film, with Love From Munera, was also an official selection at the TIFF Next Wave 2021 Festival and the 2021 Breakthroughs Film Festival, which is just insane. And I think it's so cool how you were able to, you know, kind of intertwine the things that you cared about, all of the sort of activism aspects in with your films, and it's amazing to see how those are the films that are always received so well. So what was the experience like making your first short documentaries, and how did you react to all the critical acclaim that it received?
Yeah, thank you. So From Syria to Hope, I created with no budget, and I had started getting the sense that in order to be listened to in the industry, you do need to just go out and create, and you can't really wait for someone to give you an opportunity to direct your first short film, because it's kind of this cycle that doesn't make much sense, where you're not going to be given funding for your first short film unless you already have a short film. So I think I recognized that after doing a bit of research on some new artists that I really admired. So I created From Syria to Hope by you know, just reaching out to community members, family members who could help me. It was about 3 Syrian newcomer families and how they resettled into their different spaces across the GTA. I had my mom help me a lot. I had my mom's friend help me. I had a close friend of mine help me, both of whom are Syrian. So that really helped too, also because I don't speak Arabic. So it was a pretty ambitious project for my first short. It ended up being 35 minutes. I edited it together. I found 2 fantastic composers to create the score. So that was the experience with that one. I really didn't know much. I just picked up a camera and started shooting, and looking back at it, there's just a lot I wouldn't do the same, but it's okay because it's a learning experience.
Exactly.
Yeah, you have to start somewhere, even if, you know, 2 more years later you learned so much and you look back and you know, it is what it is. So the second film, called With Love From Munera, is about a queer Muslim storyteller and her journey of healing from the traumas of her past. This one was very challenging, but also not so challenging. It became a story of joy and, you know, of love. I titled it with Love From Munera because to me it's almost like a love letter to yourself, and I wanted the audience to feel that too, to feel that they're watching a love letter to that this person was saying to themselves, but also a love letter to, you know, the audience. So it's really about like radical self-love. And that one, I had the support of Inside Out for that film, so that was really, really great. I recently won the Audience Choice Award at Breakthroughs Film Festival, which I'm so happy about.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it's really exciting, the feedback that I'm getting on that one, also because it's my first film that had all the necessary components. We had a fantastic cinematographer, Morgana McKenzie, great editor, great composer, mostly an all-woman team, which was also really exciting.
Girl power.
So,
That's great.
yeah, I know.
We gotta celebrate that, of course.
Yeah.
So, you know, going from doing basically almost everything yourself in your first to having a whole crew and backing in the second, was that a daunting process? And like, how do you kind of know how to, you know, direct all these people and kind of bring them together as a team to put your vision to life when you're not behind, you know, doing everything yourself, if that makes sense?
Right. I think you have to be super confident in yourself and in your own choices, and you have to know how to communicate properly with people in a way that doesn't make you uncomfortable, because as soon as you feel uncomfortable or unsure about something, then everyone else will feel that too. So I think it takes a lot of personal work to know your confidence and to know your own comfort levels, because when you're a director, whether it's, you know, a really short film or, from what I'm seeing, a feature, everything that you do in those moments around other people is going to influence them. So you just have to be on your best game. I think for me too, it felt very instinctual, actually. I felt like I wasn't thinking too much. Like I didn't feel that it was a really difficult, strenuous process. It felt very natural and comforting to me, actually. So I really loved directing. That was my first time directing a crew, and I really loved it. And I got some comments from some of my friends on set and the crew, and they were giving me some similar comments, so that really made me feel great to know that you know, my directing worked, because I would my mentor was on set too, and I asked them, like, am I doing this right? This is the way you're supposed to do it?
Am I
doing this right? And they were like, yeah, keep going. So it was so fun. And then the second project that I directed a crew of was LOE. It was a music video, Edie's first music video. We shot that in February, and that was really fun. That was an entire day. I think it was a little over maybe 12 hours. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, because there's a limit to how long you're allowed to.
It's okay.
we can cut it out.
Everyone had a great time though. Everyone was fed. Everyone was nourished. Everyone was
This is
laughing.
right now.
We didn't
Everyone
exploit
was having
anybody.
a good time. No one was forced
to be there. Yeah, and that was so fun, because I'd always wanted to do a music video, and that's another space I'm hoping to get more into, is to uplift women artists and in music videos. I'm really excited to do hopefully more of those.
Wow. Well, I mean, you know, you talk so much about all your filmmaking work, and that's all been incredible, but you also do a lot of roles outside of that. You know, you also extend to the role of being a producer on the media side of the film world. So you mentioned this in the beginning. You're working with Charles Officer as his production company, Cane Sugar Filmworks, and you're also a resident associate producer on many of the documentary projects of Sami Khan, who is an Oscar-nominated director, which is, that in itself is amazing. So you're getting all the opportunities, and this is like, from where, you know, shifting to where you were to where you are now, even in our eyes as well, is just absolutely crazy. So, you know, going from those different roles, how important do you think that is as a filmmaker, as someone who wants to work in this industry, to be able to do different roles or different sides of whatever projects you're working on?
I think it's super important. You definitely need to have a passion, not just for one aspect of the industry and one aspect of the filmmaking process. You have to be really aware of what everyone else on your team is doing, and I think the best way to do that is to be in those roles, especially when I guess you're as young as I am and starting off as young as I am. So it's always like a huge learning process for me in every single thing I'm doing. You have to be open to it, right? This is my first time kind of working as a producer with what I'm doing with Sami Khan, and it's just a lot of asking questions, doing your own research, reaching out to mentors, and just, again, having the confidence to mess up, because that's definitely going to happen when you're doing things for the first time. Obviously I didn't go to film school, so a lot of the skills-based work that film school students might know, I didn't necessarily know, so I do take a lot of time to do that learning for myself. And again, this all comes with the privilege of time, right? I can say I'm really grateful to have that privilege, and to be able to balance my work life, personal life with, also learning. So obviously it's not for everyone, because it does take unfortunately a level of privilege to have that time that I feel really grateful to have.
Well, from what you've been saying, it sounds like you do a lot of different things, and I think oftentimes, especially with film, and with your first film, you basically did the majority of all the work on your own, and you wore all the different hats. And especially now with directing and producing and all of these different projects that you're working on, what is it like in a typical day of your work life, where you have to take on all of these different roles and, like you said, still continue to do learning and balance that with a personal life?
Yeah, well, I'm still figuring it out for sure. I can't say I really have it all nailed down yet. But I mean, if we're talking like strategically, I constantly am making like a new way to organize my days, and I think I do that like every 2 weeks, as if I'm actually going to follow it. I don't. It just really depends on like what your priorities are that day and that week. Like one week it might be that I'm working more so on a videography project for the Canadian Council of Muslim Women. One week I might be doing a little more extra work with Charles Officer's company. The other week I might ask to do a couple of tasks for Sami Khan. It really depends on the week and who's reaching out to me when. So as complicated as my work life sounds, it's also like a divine balance in a way, where not all of that is coming at me at the exact same time. And I'm also at the same time also trying to just schedule time for Films with a Cause, which is my organization, and we're slowly trying to turn this organization into something more, into an advocacy and DEI consulting organization. So that is something that I try and definitely schedule time for. We have team meetings bi-weekly, so it's not weekly. So we do have enough space in between to kind of, have some breathing room. And we have a wonderful team. So if there's something I need done, for example, graphics related, I have an amazing friend and colleague who helps me out with graphic stuff. Or if I have something I really need to promote, whether it's personally or whether it's part of Films with a Cause, we have someone for that, right? So I think another part of taking on this very challenging and dynamic career is having a professional support system and a personal support system to help you through it. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
And was it an adjustment for you, like getting to that lifestyle? Because obviously it's not your regular 9 to 5, and probably working, you probably do have friends who work that regular 9 to 5. So was that kind of something, I'm sure maybe you're still getting used to, and does that get in the way of kind of like, there's so much happening at one time that it can get overwhelming?
It is interesting you say that, because I do have quite a few friends that have the 9 to 5, or some are still in, just finishing their undergrad. And so it is interesting seeing everyone's different life experiences, but there's no need to kind of compare yourself to that, right? Like everyone has their own journey right now. Right now, what I'm doing is technically freelance work. So that's really great. And I'm able to not take on a project if I don't have the time for it, right? It's not like in a 9-to-5 where you have to always be right at your desk and ready to answer the phone or whatnot, right? Like I'm able to not get to something right away because those folks know that I'm also doing this, and this. So that's a really great advantage of freelance work. I developed a lot of the skills of time management and organizing from the very intense academic life that I put on myself. I kind of want to bring it back to high school because I was in the IB program, and for anyone who knows about the IB program, it is a lot. It is a lot. And say goodbye to your social life. Say goodbye to your teen years. But it was a lot of extreme self-discipline in those years of my life. And although I would do things a little bit differently and give myself more space for self-care and fun, I think it really did teach me how to organize my time effectively when you have an overwhelming amount of work to do. And so I brought that into the way that I worked throughout undergrad. So I didn't just do my schooling. I was also prioritizing networking and friends and family. And I've also always been really into watching YouTubers talk about their lives and watching entrepreneurs talk about their lives or listening to podcasts about time management. I always do that stuff. So it's not like I kind of just decided that I was going to get into the skill of time management. It's definitely something you have to build. And I'm constantly looking for new ideas to time manage better because, as important as your work life might be to you, you also can't risk burning out because a lot of people in the industry right now, and especially BIPOC folks, can definitely risk burning out when you're putting your all into your work. It's emotional labor too. You're talking about really difficult personal issues. So I would definitely emphasize self-care and all of this. Yeah.
It's so cool that you were able to develop that from such a young age. And it also, honestly, it's such an interesting thing that you kind of put that on yourself, because a lot of the times, you have a lot of parent pressure when it comes to these IB programs and having to keep up your grades, especially for not necessarily buying into the stereotypes of, our kids not doing academics, but a lot of the times when you want to focus on the more artistic side of things, you can put the academics as a less of a priority. So it's so interesting to me that that was something that you kind of put yourself into, but I guess that makes sense why you're able to, balance things so well at this point. I do want to talk a little bit more about the organization that you have founded and is the creative director for, which is Films with a Cause. And you did talk a little bit about what you do, but the gist of it is you kind of promote socially and environmentally conscious films and video productions, and you also help to uplift underrepresented communities in film, which I think is a really cool concept. So talk a little about what you aim to do with this. How did the organization come to be, and what was the process like to, set up the team and kind of build this organization from the ground up?
For sure. So yeah, I guess I skipped over a little bit of this part, but
that's for this part. Don't worry.
I think so. Right around that time when I was in second year and when I was creating From Syria to Hope, I was feeling like I was lacking that sense of community and this passion that I've always had. And like I said, at the same time, I was doing some nonprofit work, and I guess the cheesy way of putting it is I just wanted to bridge the two, right? I just thought, what can I do to not have to choose right now, and just to be able to explore.
That's not cheesy.
It's not cheesy.
It's not.
Good
It's
for
so
you.
inspiring. I'm I need to, meld all this. This is incredible.
Yeah, I think a lot of the times, our kids are forced to kind of go the creative way and leave whatever they want to do. So the fact that you were able to bring that together is so cool.
Right. Yeah. That's exactly what I hope for. So I didn't even necessarily realize that I would be creating an organization with a team behind it, but It's really great when you have friends, and even friends that you just met sometimes, or, you know, about to be your lifelong friends. Like when I was entering undergrad, the graphics designer that I mentioned, Kat, gonna hear this and hear her name, but she saw me struggling to come up with a logo for Films with a Cause when we were at Robarts Library at U of T. And she just looked at it and she's like, and she's a really great illustrator. So without even saying anything, she just took it, got her tablet out, just drew something.
Oh my
and she was like, what about this? And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, we
just
can
casually.
do that. So then that's kind of how it started. And then we brought in our other friend on it, Yazmeen, who's the events coordinator at Films with a Cause. And then we started putting out calls, and I started talking to different people who I knew in my circles, or we were putting out calls through U of T for volunteers needed for a very new organization. And so it kind of started from there, started throughout the networks that we knew through school, some friends that I had at Ottawa, so we could kind of spread the word further. And so it started off as social media campaigns, and then we created our first event, which was the premiere of From Syria to Hope, and that happened March, I think it was 2018. No, it was 2019. March 2019 was the premiere From Syria to Hope. So I put together a panel. I was on the panel. I had my friend moderate it. We had someone from the Syrian Canadian Council. We had someone from Amnesty International. So everyone watched the film, and then we talked about it a little bit afterwards. Yeah, I was planning all of that, like, during my classes. I can say that now. And then our second event happened right before the pandemic, called Intersections of Film and Activism. That was also a really great panel that we put together, involving Jillian Miller and Denisha Prendergast, who is the first grandchild of Bob Marley, which is really cool. And she just has an amazing wealth of experience. And, you know, again, it's just reaching into your networks, reaching into people you know who have amazing life experiences that can hype you up and, like, help you build what you're trying to start. So yeah, it mainly has been an advocacy-based organization, full of volunteers. And so I always knew that I wanted Films with a Cause to be something a little bit larger after I graduated U of T, and I wanted to make this something more sustainable for myself and for the folks who had been volunteering their time for so long. So we've been working with the Transmedia Zone at Ryerson University's Creation Innovation Studio to come up with different ways that we could do that. And so after we finished with our cohort, we decided that we are going to be going into what's called diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting. So right now we're trying to gather the right research together on what are the best ways to approach that type of consulting in the industry and in film and television projects. Because we feel that that is something that is really needed, especially in Canadian spaces where certain characters and certain experiences that are considered historically marginalized aren't always represented the best, you know, even when it's coming from folks who might be from a historically marginalized background themselves, right? So you kind of always should have a consultant there when you're discussing or highlighting any kind of experience that might be sensitive, because you know, not just for the fact that your audience might not watch it or you might get canceled from it. Of course, the broadcasters are going to be wanting to think about that. But of course, for us, it's mainly the fact that these stereotypes and these tropes are so regressive that they're causing actual harm and violence to communities. And that we know that if the reverse were to happen, if these consultants could allow these stories to become empowering and uplifting, that these individuals in the communities and the communities at large can feel more empowered themselves to be able to see themselves reflected in a way that's honest and true. So that is our goal right now.
That is, oh my God. I think every word you're saying, I'm kind of being even more blown away, because also the fact that you're 22 years old, that is just incredible what you're doing, and so necessary, truly, in this industry, and in making sure everything is truly authentic, because clearly, even with the success of your films, audiences are hungry for that. It's just a matter of who's brave enough to kind of put that out there. And so with all of these kind of projects and the scale that Films with a Cause is growing to, were there any obstacles, and I'm sure there were, or kind of challenges bringing this all together, and how did you deal with that?
There have been challenges, and I think it's mainly team challenges and finding your own time to dedicate towards a team of people that you built, because, you know, leadership is hard, because especially when it's friends and people that you truly admire on a personal level as well. Because sometimes it is hard to ask your friend to do something that you need.
It's a tough dynamic,
You know, I mean, it works out great. Right now I'm at my best friend who's the events coordinator, sister's place, because my place doesn't have Wi-Fi right now. So
oh gosh, you get opportunities that way.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. So it actually also is a great thing to be able to work alongside your friends. Because they're the people who are going to tell you exactly what you need to hear also, not necessarily, you know, what you want to hear, not necessarily always the praise, but exactly the way you need to hear something, they will tell that to you, right? So I think that helps a lot, but definitely sometimes we have had an extensive interviewing process for a volunteer part of Films with a Cause, and had someone drop out that we took so long to interview and train, they might drop out the next week, right? Because we don't have a firm contract in place. We're not incorporated just yet, and we're on that path, and we're getting there, but most of our team are from, you know, historically marginalized backgrounds ourselves. Access to funding is very difficult, especially when you're trying to do something that has not been done before necessarily. So we're still on that journey of getting the funding for the work that we're doing, but we're also trying to be strategic about it, and we don't want to hop into an agreement with a funder that we're not ready for or that we don't fully believe. So, you know, it took a lot of work to kind of be in this motivated place that our team is in now. A lot of reshuffling, but I'm grateful to say that we have some type of structure right now.
Yeah, well, it's been so nice hearing about, you know, all of your experiences in so many different parts of the film industry, the advocacy aspect, the volunteering organizations, and being a filmmaker yourself. I think you are definitely to prove that, you know, art and film definitely has the ability to make an impact with advocacy and just all the things that needs to be changed in the world. So we always like to ask this to our guests. What do you think are some misconceptions that you believe people have about working in the professional arts industry, and what do you wish to say to those people?
I think number one is that there are no jobs, and some people might not like that I'm saying this, but I just do not believe that that's true at all. I think that there are so many opportunities, and I think it is a matter of actively searching for them, which can be tedious and can be stressful, but the opportunities are out there. And also, if you show enough passion, then the right people will create opportunities for you that weren't there before, which is what I've experienced. So I think I'm also an optimist, so I will go to places that don't, or people that don't necessarily have, you know, a job posting on their website or a job posting in their bio or whatever, and just kind of start a flow of communication with someone, and it eventually does turn into some type of professional partnership. So that is something that I wish more young people knew, is that you don't have to wait for that job posting to get into the industry, right? It's about taking initiative. Again, I also acknowledge it takes privilege to be able to have that time to, you know, wait to get that first check, because it is a long process. But for those who are able to, and, you know, who have that drive and that specific interest in taking this path, I would definitely suggest reaching out to people who are at a level that you hope to be at one day, and that I strongly believe that folks can find professional interactions where they didn't expect that to happen.
And I guess on that note, it's actually perfect, because I guess more even elaborating on that whole idea of advice, because you know, again, you've navigated this industry incredibly well, even from our eyes. And I know you say you're still figuring things out, but still, you know, we talk to so many people who want to kind of get into this industry, but they're just they feel unsupported, or they feel like it's just such a daunting task. So I guess overall advice, what would you say to those people?
I would say mentorship is number one. Like, I think that's the key word you're looking for. You know, BIPOC TV and Film is a fantastic, established organization that hosts a lot of mentorship programs and gives you the chance to interact with industry members one-on-one. That's actually how I met Sami Khan, and you know, how we ended up doing some projects together. So there's also film festivals for young folks that arrange coffee meetups and virtual coffee meetups. And especially now in COVID, I think this has been really interesting to see how having virtual conversations is just a very new phenomenon, where people are so much more open to having phone calls as opposed to like meeting you in person, which you might not necessarily have the time to do, but you may have the time to get on a phone call with someone for 15 minutes, and that might, you know, change your life, to be quite honest. I've had that happen to me.
You're a testament to that.
Right. Yeah. So I think always be on the lookout for those type of film festivals and organizations that are arranging those mentorship opportunities for you. And there's definitely a lot more coming up for young and emerging QT BIPOC creatives. So any organization you can think of right now is really trying to open up opportunities for mentorship in that area. So I think doing a lot of research and coming up with, you know, the opportunities that might make sense for you, and even sometimes reaching out to these film festivals or organizations and saying, you know, I have, for example, if you're still in high school, I have some volunteer hours to fulfill. Can I do some stuff for you and learn on the way? And that's a great way to start getting connected. Yeah, I would definitely just say mentorship and finding folks much older and wiser and experienced than you to lead you.
Right. Well, Yazmeen, thank you so much for talking with us. Such a wealth of knowledge, and so incredibly cool to see everything that you're doing, and how much you've, you know, come in this industry, and how much of really the work you're putting in. It just does go to show that if you do put in the work, you do, you know, find those opportunities, make those opportunities for yourself, you really can kind of establish yourself in this industry. And that's, I guess, what anyone else can wish for. So if you guys would like to go check out any of Yazmeen's work, all her pages, Films with a Cause, all of her links will be in the descriptions of wherever you're watching or listening to this too. And then with that being said, thank you so much for listening and watching, and we will see you on next week's episode. Bye.